Protests outside an immigration detention center in New Jersey have been growing for the last few days. And in the last hour, the situation between protesters and law enforcement became very, very volatile. Our crew was on the ground at the moment things escalated. And I want to bring in my colleague, Laura Hafley. She is live outside the Newark Detention Center tonight. Laura, what happened there?
Well, look, things escalated really quickly. Essentially, protesters were asked on several occasions to leave and move away from directly out front of the detention center. Police gave several warnings, as they do. They come up over their vehicle loudspeaker. They ask protesters to disperse. And they say, if you don't, there will be consequences. And there were. We saw essentially a line. You're seeing a little bit of it now, actually. There was state troopers, New Jersey state troopers with shields. There were troopers on horseback. And look, as soon as we saw things escalating, we turned around to run as fast as possible. And everything happened so quickly. All of a sudden, we heard what sounded like less than lethal weapon gunshots, what sounded like either tear gas or pepper spray, and then I felt it immediately. I couldn't see. I was coughing a ton. My photographer was having some trouble. Luckily, we have an amazing security guard who got us out of there quickly, but this is what we saw. It's troopers facing off against protesters. Sorry, yeah, I'm just watching this footage back. All because they were asked to leave it, and they didn't, Stephanie.
What got us here?
Well, look, people have been outside of Delaney Hall in Newark at this ICE detention center all week. Today, Governor Sherrill held a press conference. During that press conference, she said that they were going to set up designated areas for protesters to stand. Those areas started to be set up by troopers. Barricades were going up, and protesters quickly decided they did not want to be put in those areas. They sat down on the ground and refused to move from out front of the detention center. They were effectively blocking the detention center driveway. That's when state troopers decided to escalate the situation and remove them forcibly, and this was the result of that.
Laura, thank you so much for this update. Please get home safe, and we appreciate you joining us. I want to bring in our nightcap now, because look at your calendar. We are now 150 days out from the midterms, and today our president, Donald Trump, suffered some major legal defeats. A judge temporarily blocked the $1.8 billion fund for those who claim that they were targeted by the federal government, including January 6 rioters. And the judge in the original Trump lawsuit against the IRS, well, he wants to investigate how exactly this settlement was reached. Meanwhile, in Washington, President Trump held a meeting with his top advisors in the Situation Room to talk about a potential deal with Iran and whether he would give final approval. A White House official said the meeting lasted about 2 hours and that Trump, quote, will only make a deal that is good for America, but wouldn't say whether any sort of agreement had actually been reached. The president had posted some of his terms on social media, like an immediate opening of the Strait of Hormuz without tolls. One of his sticking points is that Iran agrees to never pursue a nuclear weapon. For fact's sake, that was part of President Obama's Iran deal, the deal that President Trump tore up. In his post, Trump also said the U.S. would end its blockade and extract and destroy Iran's enriched uranium. All right, now let's bring in our nightcap. David Rohde is here, and I know he's got a lot to say on this topic. He's MS Now's senior national security reporter. Ron Insana is back, MS Now contributor and publisher of the must-read Message of the Markets on Substack. Anthony Fisher joins us, and he has brought a full notebook of notes. So he's ready. MS Now senior editor and opinion columnist, and Amit Baba, independent journalist and founder of Amit Baba News on Substack. Okay, I want to start with these legal blows. How do you expect this administration is going to react?
I mean, first off, it's just good to see that we still live in a nation of laws.
We do.
You know, we do. It's good to see, you know, the federal process actually working out in a way that holds Trump accountable here. I think he's going to throw a fit. And I think right now, when it comes to the $1.8 billion or $1.776 billion fund, I think he might back down. We see some people in the White House. We see Senate Republicans in particular kind of expressing some concern. I don't see that this fund would move forward because when you look at the legality of it, I think fraud is the right term to use, as these judges pointed out, right? Because, I mean, he was effectively, this is a robbery, right? And it was a settlement after an attempted robbery of $10 billion in taxpayer funds to himself, as we talked about on the show. You know, you talk about it nightly. You're always talking about these grifts. And he basically settled with himself. And one of the fundamental parts of this, the judge said, he wants to see whether or not Trump colluded with basically himself to greenlight this. I think it's, you know, given he's got a little bit of a history of collusion as well on top of this, I think it's pretty clear that he did, in fact, weigh in on this. And you have Todd Blanche at the DOJ, his former personal attorney, who's still acting as his personal attorney.
But he gets mad if you bring that up. There was a lot of shock when Trump's settlement was announced. Do you think this fund is actually going to come to fruition? Because people I talk to in the business community, some are definitely willing to look the other way, but I haven't come across anyone who says, right on, this is a good idea. And I don't know of any voting groups that are saying, yes, this is what I've asked for.
Nor are some Republican congressmen saying this is a good idea.
Very
and I think
good
that's
point.
where
That's
where it's going to, you know, the fulcrum point is. And I also think that with the rider is not being discussed enough, which is his past and future immunity from all IRS audits, examanations of himself,
and his business,
his family, and the trusts. So it's not just the 1776 amount of money, but it's also this other piece that is unprecedented in U.S. history as far as tax treatment is going. No one gets immunity from future
Forever.
examinations, past, present, and future, for that matter. So, yeah, I actually think, and I would agree with Ahmed to a certain extent, if it's the courts or if it's Congress, I think they're going to turn thumbs down on this ultimately.
Now let's turn. We still do not have an agreement on Iran. The president's allies, put out every possible smoke signal that says we want out, this thing's over. But the president has been teasing this peace deal for quite some time. Based on what you know, where do things really stand?
The U.S. is essentially capitulating to Iran. But
how? Explain.
So there's maybe one good thing. On the reporting that's come out about this memorandum of understanding, the one positive thing for the U.S. is reopening the Strait of Hormuz. That the U.S. wants that to happen. It could help bring energy prices down. But in terms of
yes, but to be clear, the Strait of Hormuz was open before we struck Iran. So if all we get is the Strait of Hormuz opening, then essentially we got worse than nothing.
Correct. And then every other major point, his demand that the nuclear material be removed, those negotiations are pushed off for 60 days afterwards, and there's no definitive conclusion. There's nothing in this agreement about missiles. 70% of Iran's missile stockpile has survived this. They can fire those missiles anytime at the Persian Gulf area, all those refineries and pipelines, and cause another oil crisis. There's no agreement in terms of Iran's armed forces and particularly their proxies. This was one of the main things when Trump had the speech on February 28th. We were going to take out their proxies. That hasn't been addressed at all. And there's even notes in this agreement, the draft one, about a great chunk of money, like more than $100 billion in Iranian assets going back to Iran. He attacked and savaged President Obama for only returning $1.5 billion. So it's, you know, he's done a great job, I think, of talking this up and keeping the stock market up, maybe, by constantly teasing a solution here. But this agreement is capitulation by the United States. It's a win for Iran.
The New York Times has a new piece out that they said Trump's moves on Iran have more to do with his mood, how he's feeling, than any actual strategy. How do you see it?
Well, you know, when Trump does press conferences, he has a move he calls the weave, where he starts talking about perhaps the issue at hand and then starts rambling about Biden or Obama or Hillary Clinton or a sports team. And he insists that there's a method to that madness, even if, like, the shambolic press conference goes on for 90 minutes. That appears to be how he handles the negotiations to end the war he started with Iran. At 1 minute, it's Iran can never be allowed to have a nuclear weapon. Then the next, it's we already took out their uranium and it's just nuclear dust, his words. So the seriousness of the negotiations, the seriousness of the ideas he's putting forth seem to be on a whim, easily discarded, and whatever was the biggest thing he was talking about with his senior advisors or international negotiators one day might not be of any interest to him the next.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's well put. And you know, some of his allies have previously tried to say, like, oh, this unpredictability is for a purpose. You know, he's trying to act crazy in order to get concessions, which I guess is the madman theory. But the problem is, if you do the madman theory and you have no theory, you're just left with a madman, right? There was no theory of the case here. There's no actual goals. There's no actual sought-out concessions here. David, as you've outlined and also in your reporting, basically what is on the table right now for this deal is to solve a problem that was created by the war itself. On February 27th, as you outlined, the Strait of Hormuz, that was the day before the strikes, it was open. And now we're trying to get right back to that. We're not even talking about nuclear.
Open it and say, can you please take the tolls out?
Yeah, exactly.